John Milton's monumental epic, Paradise Lost, stands as a towering achievement in English literature. It is a work of unparalleled ambition, grappling with nothing less than the origins of evil, the nature of free will, and the very cosmology of existence. At the heart of this profound theological narrative lies a central paradox that has captivated readers and scholars for centuries. The figure of Satan, the embodiment of evil and the orchestrator of humanity's downfall, is often portrayed as irresistibly compelling. The poem is, at its core, an epic of fall, chronicling not only the tragic expulsion of Adam and Eve from Eden, but also the prior, cataclysmic descent of the archangel Lucifer into the abyss of damnation, becoming Satan. Milton, a devout Puritan and a staunch advocate for liberty, undertook this arduous task to justify the ways of God to men. Yet his depiction of the adversary inadvertently lends Satan a grandeur and charisma that often overshadows the divine characters. From the moment Satan is introduced, hurled headlong from heaven with his legions of fallen angels, his character is defined by a magnificent, albeit destructive, defiance. His initial speeches in the fiery depths of hell are masterpieces of rhetoric, demonstrating an indomitable will and a leadership quality that rallies his shattered forces. He confronts the unimaginable torment of his new reality not with despair, but with a fierce resolution, famously declaring that the mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. This profound assertion of internal sovereignty, even in the face of absolute external defeat, strikes a deep chord with the human spirit's longing for autonomy. Satan's attractiveness stems significantly from his portrayal as a tragic hero, a figure of immense power and intellect brought low by insurmountable pride. His rebellion against God is framed not merely as an act of malevolence, but as a quest for self-determination, a refusal to bow to a perceived tyranny. He articulates his cause as a fight for freedom, rallying his fellow fallen angels by appealing to their past glory and promising a future where they might carve out their own dominion. His iconic declaration that it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven encapsulates this defiant spirit. It transforms his banishment into a kind of twisted victory, a choice for painful independence over subservient bliss. This ethos, however corrupted, resonates with a deeply human yearning for liberation from perceived oppression, even if that liberation is ultimately self-destructive. Furthermore, Milton endows Satan with an extraordinary capacity for persuasive oratory. He is a master manipulator of language, capable of weaving elaborate arguments that twist truth and inspire loyalty. His speeches in the Great Council of Pandemonium are not just tirades, they are strategically crafted calls to action, appeals to courage and meticulously constructed justifications for continued rebellion. He manages to convince his followers, still reeling from their defeat, that their strength lies in their unity and their unyielding opposition to divine authority. This rhetorical prowess, combined with his unwavering commitment to his nefarious goals, makes him a compelling, albeit dangerous, leader. He embodies the destructive potential of charisma when divorced from virtue. The pathos surrounding Satan also contributes to his complex appeal. Milton occasionally allows us glimpses into Satan's own torment and his recognition of the irreversible nature of his fall. There are moments of introspection where he acknowledges the sheer evil of his path and the immense personal cost of his rebellion. He understands that there is no repentance for him, no forgiveness possible, yet he stubbornly refuses to yield. This tragic awareness of his own damnation, coupled with his resolute determination to persist in his wickedness, lends him a certain grandeur and evokes a perverse sympathy. He becomes a figure of immense suffering, whose suffering is self-inflicted, yet still commands a grim admiration for his unyielding will. Ultimately, the epic of fall in Paradise Lost is made infinitely more profound by the magnetic force of its antagonist. Satan's fall from grace is the blueprint for humanity's own. His seduction of Eve, meticulously planned and executed, is a testament to his cunning and his ability to exploit vulnerabilities. The tragedy of humanity's banishment from Eden is inextricably linked to Satan's prior fall, making him the catalyst for the entire epic narrative of loss, sin, and the struggle for redemption. Through Satan, Milton explores the very nature of evil, not as a simple absence of good, but as an active, powerful, and alluring force. It is a force that demands a titanic struggle, both cosmic and internal, to be overcome. It is this intricate portrayal of evil, endowed with such compelling attributes, that ensures Satan remains one of the most fascinating and enduring figures in the literary canon, forever challenging readers to contemplate the seductive power of transgression. John Milton's monumental epic poem, Paradise Lost, stands as a towering achievement in English literature, delving into profound theological and philosophical questions that have resonated for centuries. At its heart lies the ambitious narrative concerning the biblical story of the fall of man, a grand cosmic drama where the very forces of good and evil contend for the soul of creation. Beyond its theological framework, the poem has captivated generations of readers, not least for its extraordinarily complex and, to many, alluring portrayal of the Archfiend himself, Satan. Indeed, a central fascination with this masterpiece lies in the magnetic pull of its primary antagonist, prompting the question, why is the devil or Satan so attractive in this epic of the fall? Milton's Satan is far from a simplistic caricature of evil. Instead, he is a figure of immense intellectual power, oratorical skill, and an unyielding, albeit corrupted, will. From the moment he awakens in the fiery abyss of hell, after his defeat in the celestial war, he embodies a defiance that is both terrifying and compelling. His famous declaration that it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven encapsulates a spirit of absolute autonomy. It is a rejection of servitude, even if it means enduring eternal torment. This sentiment strikes a chord with human aspirations for freedom and self-determination, resonating with a desire to forge one's own destiny, regardless of the cost. He rallies his demoralized legions, infusing them with a renewed sense of purpose and rebellion, demonstrating extraordinary leadership qualities under the most dire circumstances. His charisma is undeniable, and his ability to sway and inspire through rhetoric is unparalleled, transforming a defeated mob into an organized force intent on vengeance against omnipotence. The perceived attractiveness of Satan lies in this very defiance and the sheer magnitude of his struggle. He challenges an omnipotent God, seemingly pitting his indomitable will against infinite power. This contest, despite its inevitable outcome, inspires a perverse admiration. Readers often find themselves drawn to his tragic grandeur, his refusal to submit, and his eloquent articulation of his grievances. He is presented not as a cackling villain, but as a warrior prince, albeit a fallen one, whose pride and ambition led to his catastrophic downfall. This tragic dimension evokes a degree of sympathy, making him relatable as a figure who, like humanity, suffers the consequences of his choices. His internal torments, his moments of self-doubt and regret, further humanize him, revealing the profound psychological cost of his rebellion. He is depicted wrestling with despair, even shedding large drops of tears which were not for his own loss but for the woe of others. These moments expose a flicker of his former, uncorrupted self. This inner turmoil adds layers to his character, preventing him from being a unidimensional villain, and instead presenting him as a profoundly complex being grappling with the ramifications of his monumental transgression. However, to understand the full scope of Milton's genius, it is crucial to recognize that this allure is intentional, yet ultimately a deceptive trap set by the author to highlight the insidious nature of evil. Milton's explicit purpose, stated in the opening lines, is to justify the ways of God to men, while Satan embodies impressive qualities like courage, resolve, and persuasive speech. These virtues are ultimately perverted and directed towards destructive ends. His ambition is hubris, his freedom is rebellion against divine order, and his leadership is a path to eternal damnation for himself and his followers. The epic of the fall that Paradise Lost narrates is therefore not merely the story of humanity's disobedience, but also the catastrophic consequence of Satan's initial, pride-driven revolt. Satan's journey from a glorious archangel to the serpent who tempts Eve is a testament to the corrosive power of envy, spite, and unrelenting hatred. His initial grandeur slowly diminishes throughout the poem. The defiant warrior of hell gradually transforms into a deceitful trickster, culminating in his ignoble form as a serpent, reflecting his moral degradation. His ultimate punishment is not just physical torment, but an internal damnation, a constant, gnawing awareness of his lost glory and the futility of his revolt. The temporary victories he achieves, such as the successful temptation of Adam and Eve, are hollow, serving only to deepen his misery and confirm his irrevocable separation from grace. The fascination with Satan in Paradise Lost thus stems from a masterful artistic paradox. Milton crafts a character so compelling, so seemingly heroic in his defiance, that he risks overshadowing God himself in the eyes of some readers. This famously led William Blake to suggest that Milton was of the devil's party without knowing it. Yet Milton's ultimate aim is to demonstrate the profound tragedy inherent in such a path. Satan's attractiveness serves as a powerful cautionary tale, illustrating how even the noblest qualities, such as courage, intellect, and freedom, can be twisted into instruments of destruction when untethered from humility and divine will. His compelling nature is a mirror reflecting humanity's own susceptibility to pride, ambition, and the temptation of forbidden knowledge, making the Epic of the Fall a timeless exploration of choice, consequence, and the enduring struggle between good and evil within the human heart. John Milton's monumental epic, Paradise Lost, stands as a towering achievement in English literature, meticulously chronicling the biblical story of the fall of man. Yet among its myriad profound themes and intricate theological debates, one question consistently fascinates readers across centuries. Why is the devil, Satan, so compelling and charismatic, despite being the embodiment of evil and rebellion? This poem, an epic of the fall, inadvertently elevates its antagonist to a figure of tragic grandeur and captivating complexity, making him one of literature's most enduring and charismatic villains. We will explore the multifaceted reasons behind Satan's allure, examining his rhetorical genius, his defiant spirit, his leadership qualities, and the profound psychological depth Milton imbues him with. One of the most undeniable sources of Satan's magnetic appeal lies in his extraordinary rhetorical prowess and unparalleled oratorical skills. From the very opening books of Paradise Lost after his cataclysmic fall from heaven into the fiery abyss of hell, Satan demonstrates an almost superhuman ability to sway, inspire, and manipulate his vast legions of fallen angels. His speeches are masterclasses in persuasive rhetoric, characterized by impassioned appeals to liberty, defiance, and the rejection of what he frames as divine tyranny. For instance, in Book 1, Having Awoken in the Burning Lake, he rallies his dispirited followers with a powerful address. He transforms their utter defeat into a narrative of valiant struggle against an oppressive ruler. He masterfully employs anaphora, vivid imagery, and a commanding tone to reconstruct their shattered morale, painting their expulsion not as punishment, but as a strategic retreat by independent spirits. This profound ability to articulate a compelling vision, even one born of malice and deceit, makes him a figure of immense influence, turning the despair of his fellow demons into a renewed, albeit misguided, sense of purpose. Beyond mere words, Satan's charisma is inextricably linked to his unwavering resolve and remarkable leadership qualities, particularly in the face of insurmountable defeat. Immediately following their devastating loss to God's forces, while still reeling from their fall into chaos, Satan refuses to succumb to despair. Instead, he emerges as the preeminent strategist and motivator among the fallen. He conceives the audacious plan to build Pandemonium, the magnificent capital of hell, a physical manifestation of their defiant spirit and an organizational feat that rivals celestial architecture. His ability to mobilize millions of despairing beings, to instill in them a sense of collective identity and a shared objective. Even if that objective is ultimately destructive, showcases a leadership acumen that is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. He projects an image of steadfast courage and indomitable will, presenting himself as the first among equals. Willing to undertake the most perilous tasks himself, such as his solitary journey through chaos to find the new world. This proactive and fearless leadership, even when directed towards malevolent ends, undeniably contributes to his captivating presence. Furthermore, a significant part of Satan's allure stems from his portrayal as a rebel against perceived tyranny and an advocate for self-determination. His iconic declaration that it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven encapsulates the core of his defiant philosophy. This statement, uttered with such conviction, resonates with a deeply human desire for autonomy and freedom, even if it leads to self-destruction. Milton's genius lies in presenting Satan's rebellion not as a simple act of evil, but as a complex assertion of free will against an omnipotent and seemingly arbitrary power. Readers, particularly during later periods like the Romantic era, have often found a sympathetic echo in this struggle against an absolute authority. Interpreting Satan as a tragic hero who champions individualism against a divine monarchy. His refusal to bow down, to submit to a predetermined order, positions him as a figure who dared to challenge the status quo, thereby appealing to the rebellious spirit inherent in human nature. This interpretation, while arguably contrary to Milton's theological intent, nonetheless underscores the powerful impact of Satan's narrative as a defiant champion of unbridled will. The complexity of Satan's character is further deepened by the moments of profound internal conflict and suffering that Milton grants him. While primarily a figure of unyielding evil, there are instances, particularly during his solitary journey to Eden, where Satan experiences genuine remorse, doubt, and a searing awareness of his own damnation. His soliloquy on Mount Niphates in Book 4 is a poignant revelation of his tormented soul. He acknowledges his own culpability, crying out, "Me miserable! Which way shall I fly / infinite wrath and infinite despair?" He admits that his pride led to his downfall and that he is irrevocably bound to evil. This glimpse into his internal anguish, his self-awareness of the tragic consequences of his choices, elevates him beyond a one-dimensional villain. It injects a tragic dimension into his character, allowing readers to perceive him not just as a monster, but as a being consumed by his own grand, albeit flawed, ambition. This internal struggle makes him more human in a sense, adding layers of psychological depth that evoke a form of pity, even amidst his villainy, thus enhancing his tragic heroism and overall charisma. Finally, the grand scale of his ambition and the sheer force of his presence contribute significantly to Satan's captivating nature. His enterprise, though born of malice, is epic in its scope, to corrupt God's newest creation, man, and thereby spite the Almighty. This ambition is pursued with an almost sublime determination, requiring incredible feats of will, endurance, and cunning. From braving the perils of chaos to outwitting the angelic guardians of Eden, Satan's journey is presented with such dramatic intensity that he often overshadows the more passive figures of Adam and Eve. Milton, despite his explicit intention to justify the ways of God to men, inadvertently bestows upon Satan such a compelling voice and dramatic role that he often dominates the narrative. This powerful dramatic presence, coupled with the monumental scale of his endeavors, makes him a figure of immense fascination. His story, the Epic of the Fall, becomes in many ways an epic of Satan's relentless, albeit destructive, will. The enduring charisma of Satan in John Milton's Paradise Lost is a complex interplay of brilliant rhetoric, unwavering leadership, a defiant spirit against authority, and profound internal torment. He is a figure who, despite being the architect of evil, commands attention through his powerful speeches, his indomitable will to resist, and the tragic grandeur of his flawed ambition. Milton's masterful portrayal of the devil, though intended to condemn his actions, imbues him with such a dramatic presence and psychological depth that he transcends simple villainy. He emerges as one of literature's most compelling and charismatic antagonists, a testament to the power of the epic of the fall and the intricate nature of human perception of good and evil. John Milton's monumental epic, Paradise Lost, stands as a towering achievement in English literature. A profound exploration of humanity's original sin and the cosmic conflict between good and evil. Yet within this grand narrative, a fascinating paradox emerges, perpetually captivating readers and scholars alike. Why is the devil, Satan himself, portrayed with such compelling allure? This question probes into the very heart of Milton's genius and the enduring power of his antihero in the Epic of the Fall. Far from a simplistic depiction of malevolent evil, Milton crafts a figure of immense charisma, formidable intellect, and tragic grandeur, inviting a complex psychological engagement that transcends mere condemnation. From the very opening books, Milton presents Satan not as a cowering fiend, but as a fallen archangel, magnificent even in ruin. His first utterance, that it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, immediately establishes a defiant and independent spirit. This resonates with a universal human desire for autonomy and self-determination. This resolute declaration, spoken amidst the dungeon horrible on all sides round, transforms his abyssal prison into a potential kingdom. A realm where his will, though limited, can at least be sovereign. This sentiment of unyielding resolve against an omnipotent adversary lends Satan a tragic heroism, a noble dignity even in defeat. He embodies the spirit of an individual who, having lost everything, refuses to surrender his pride or his capacity for leadership, thereby imbuing the Epic of the Fall with a profound sense of rebellious defiance. Satan's charismatic leadership and unparalleled rhetorical skill are central to his magnetic appeal. After his ignominious fall from heaven, he stands amidst his vanquished legions, his dauntless courage unbroken. With powerful oratory, he rallies the fallen angels from despair into a renewed spirit of opposition. His speeches are masterclasses in persuasion, filled with stirring imagery and logical fallacies that nonetheless inspire conviction in his followers. He appeals to their wounded pride, promising a new dominion born from their collective strength and an enduring defiance against tyrannical authority, which he perceives in God's absolute rule. This extraordinary ability to galvanize a demoralized host, transforming their defeat into a renewed purpose, showcases him as a natural leader, a figure capable of inspiring both loyalty and awe despite the malevolent nature of his ultimate goals. The motivations driving Satan are multi-layered, stemming primarily from an insatiable pride and profound envy. He cannot accept a subordinate position to God's Son, seeing it as an affront to his own perceived merit and celestial seniority. This towering pride fuels his rebellion, transforming a desire for recognition into a fierce rejection of any form of servitude. Milton meticulously charts his journey from a magnificent archangel, among the brightest of God's creations, to the formidable and vengeful monarch of hell. This internal transformation is not without its agonizing moments. Satan experiences profound torment and despair, acknowledging the irrevocable loss of his former glory. Yet each pang of regret is swiftly overshadowed by a stubborn resolve to persist in evil, transforming his inner suffering into a hardened determination, which paradoxically makes him a more psychologically complex and, hence, more compelling character. Milton's portrayal of Satan as a complex figure, rather than merely an embodiment of pure evil, establishes him as the ultimate antihero or hero-villain. He possesses qualities traditionally associated with heroism, such as courage, resilience, powerful leadership, and an indomitable will. However, he directs these formidable attributes towards destructive and malevolent ends. This duality is critical to his allure. He is not a cardboard cutout villain, but a character endowed with significant psychological depth, allowing readers to grapple with the complexities of ambition, free will, and the corrupting influence of pride. Writers of the Romantic era, such as William Blake and Percy Bysshe Shelley, famously champions Satan as a figure of rebellious spirit. A symbol of freedom fighting against oppressive authority, further cementing his status as an iconic anti-hero. Milton, a staunch Republican himself, may have subtly imbued Satan with certain anti-monarchical sentiments. However, ironically, that resonated with later revolutionary ideals. The epic of the Fall hinges on Satan's meticulous plan to corrupt humanity, particularly through the temptation of Eve. His journey from hell to Eden is depicted as a perilous, awe-inspiring feat, further highlighting his relentless drive and strategic brilliance. He studies humanity's vulnerabilities, understanding the power of flattery, false promises of knowledge, and the appeal of forbidden fruit as a means to achieve godlike status. This intellectual cunning, coupled with his deceptive charm, allows him to subtly undermine Eve's reason and persuade her to disobey. The narrative thus becomes a profound exploration of free will and its consequences, demonstrating how even seemingly subtle temptations, when coupled with the persuasive power of a master manipulator like Satan, can lead to catastrophic choices. Despite his outward majesty and compelling force, Milton consistently shows Satan's internal corruption and ultimate self-destruction. The grandeur of his speeches and the formidable imagery associated with him are always contrasted with his growing moral decay. He becomes increasingly wretched and tormented, filled with envy, rage, and a gnawing sense of emptiness. His triumph in orchestrating the fall of man brings him no lasting joy, only a fleeting, bitter satisfaction, culminating in his degrading transformation into a serpent, echoing his deceptive act. This descent into spiritual emptiness underscores Milton's theological purpose, to justify the ways of God to men, by demonstrating that rebellion against divine order ultimately leads to self-inflicted damnation. Yet it is this very struggle, this agonizing internal conflict between his former glory and his chosen path of evil, that prevents Satan from becoming a one-dimensional villain. This ensures his enduring fascination in John Milton's Paradise Lost and the question of why the devil, Satan, is so alluring in this epic of the fall. He remains a testament to the captivating power of a character who, despite representing evil, embodies an almost superhuman will and a tragic grandeur that compels readers to look beyond simplistic moral judgments. John Milton's monumental epic, Paradise Lost, stands as a cornerstone of English literature. A profound theological and philosophical exploration of humanity's fall from grace. Within its intricate tapestry of celestial warfare, divine providence, and tragic disobedience, one character consistently eclipses all others in terms of compelling narrative presence and enduring critical fascination. Satan. Far from being a mere embodiment of absolute evil, Milton's depiction of the Archfiend presents a complex, multifaceted figure whose undeniable charisma and defiant spirit have captivated generations of readers. Paradoxically, this makes him the most attractive, albeit villainous, character in a poem ostensibly written to justify the ways of God to men. The central question that has preoccupied scholars and readers alike, therefore, is precisely this: why is Satan so captivating? What elements of his character and his epic of fall resonate so deeply with the human psyche, rendering him a figure of tragic grandeur rather than a simplistic antagonist? A significant portion of Satan's magnetic appeal stems from his portrayal as a tragic hero, a titanically ambitious individual who, despite his ultimate damnation, refuses to bow before what he perceives as tyrannical authority. Milton endows him with qualities traditionally admired in epic heroes: unparalleled courage, strategic acumen, and a formidable will. From the moment he awakens in hell, floating on the fiery surge and rallying his defeated legions, Satan demonstrates leadership of astounding proportions. His famous pronouncements, such as that it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, encapsulate a spirit of unyielding independence and self-determination that, stripped of its malevolent context, can be profoundly inspiring. This is not the cowering villain of simplistic morality tales, but a defiant general, a revolutionary leader who orchestrates a grand, albeit doomed rebellion against an omnipotent adversary. His sheer audacity in challenging the Almighty, even knowing the inevitable outcome, paints him as a figure of immense, if misguided, strength. This portrayal resonates with deeply ingrained human desires for freedom and autonomy, the inherent urge to resist oppression, even when facing insurmountable odds. The epic of his fall becomes a testament to the power of the individual will, a will that, however corrupted, refuses to be broken. Beyond his martial prowess, Satan's most potent weapon, and arguably the source of much of his allure, is his extraordinary mastery of rhetoric and his persuasive eloquence. He is a consummate orator, capable of swaying multitudes with his impassioned speeches, even in the face of utter defeat. In Pandemonium, the capital of hell, his address to the fallen angels is a tour de force of psychological manipulation, inspiring hope and rekindling courage in the despairing ranks. He skillfully reframes their catastrophic loss as an opportunity for eternal war and asserts their inherent strength, portraying their very suffering as proof of their formidable resistance. His arguments, however fallacious in their ultimate aim, are structured with logical precision and delivered with charismatic conviction. He employs vivid imagery, appeals to pride, and subtly twists truth to serve his wicked ends, convincing his followers that they were wronged, that their greatness of heart was misunderstood, and that their rebellion was a noble pursuit of liberty. This uncanny ability to articulate grievances, to rationalize evil, and to galvanize collective action through words alone grants him a terrifying yet undeniable magnetism. Readers are often drawn into the persuasive power of his arguments, momentarily forgetting his malicious intent. A testament to Milton's genius in crafting such a compelling antagonist. This rhetorical brilliance is a key aspect of the Epic of Fall, illustrating how even grand designs can be corrupted and propagated through insidious words. Crucially, Milton does not present Satan as a one-dimensional villain devoid of inner life. Instead, he imbues him with profound psychological depth, revealing moments of doubt, regret, and even despair. While ultimately committed to his path of destruction, Satan is not immune to the realization of his irreparable loss. In soliloquies such as his address to the sun, he laments his fixed hate and acknowledges the torture of the mind that accompanies his choices, admitting that he carries hell within him. These instances of self-reflection humanize him, transforming him from a monstrous entity into a tragic figure burdened by his own irreversible decisions. His suffering is palpable, stemming from the conscious rejection of divine grace and the crushing weight of his eternal damnation. This internal conflict, the glimmer of nobility overshadowed by an escalating commitment to evil, evokes a complex mixture of pity and terror in the reader. We witness the agony of a magnificent being who has consciously chosen his own ruin, an epic of fall that is as much internal as it is external. This tragic dimension prevents readers from simply dismissing him as pure evil. Instead, they are invited to contemplate the costs of ambition and the devastating consequences of pride, making his journey profoundly resonant. Satan's appeal is inextricably linked to the grand themes of ambition and free will, central to Paradise Lost *. His rebellion is fundamentally an act of self-assertion, a refusal to accept a predetermined hierarchy, and a declaration of independent will against absolute sovereignty. This extreme form of ambition, though leading to profound evil, taps into universal human desires for autonomy, power, and self-definition. He champions a distorted version of freedom, arguing for liberation from divine decree, which, for some readers, mirrors revolutionary zeal. However, Milton meticulously demonstrates how this ambition, unchecked by humility or love, inevitably corrupts, twisting freedom into license and self-assertion into destructive hubris. Satan's journey is therefore a cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked ambition and the misdirection of free will. He embodies the seductive power of evil, not as something inherently monstrous, but as a consequence of choices made, of a will defiantly set against good. His attractiveness forces readers to grapple with the nature of evil itself, Is it a distinct entity or a perversion of something potentially noble? This nuanced portrayal elevates the epic of fall from a simple story of good versus evil to a complex meditation on moral choice, responsibility, and the tragic beauty of a magnificent spirit undone by its own pride. The compelling nature of Milton's Satan has, perhaps inevitably, led to extensive critical debate regarding the author's true intentions. Romantic poets like William Blake and Percy Bysshe Shelley famously championed Satan as the true hero of Paradise Lost seeing in him an embodiment of revolutionary spirit and a proto-romantic iconoclast rebelling against oppressive authority. This interpretation suggests that Milton, perhaps unwittingly, invested so much creative energy and poetic brilliance into his antagonist that Satan overshadowed the ostensibly virtuous characters. While Milton's primary theological objective was to justify the ways of God to men, his artistic integrity compelled him to create an adversary worthy of God's power, resulting in a character of immense stature and profound psychological complexity. This artistic success inadvertently made the journey of the epic of fall from heaven's glory to hell's abyss a more vivid and tragically engaging narrative than the depiction of God's unblemished goodness. Ultimately, Satan remains an enduring literary figure because he encapsulates a profound human dilemma. The intoxicating allure of defiant ambition, the seductive power of rebellion, and the tragic consequences of a monumental will turned towards destruction. His story is a timeless exploration of choice, consequence, and the intricate, often paradoxical, nature of good and evil within the human experience, solidifying Paradise Lost not just as a religious epic, but as a universal drama of the spirit. In John Milton's monumental epic, Paradise Lost a work of unparalleled theological and literary ambition, the question of why the devil, or Satan, is attractive stands as one of the most enduring and fascinating paradoxes. This epic poem, a profound narrative of the fall, meticulously details the origins of evil and humanity's expulsion from Eden. Yet it is often the portrayal of its primary antagonist, Satan, that captures the reader's imagination most profoundly, inviting a complex, sometimes unsettling, admiration. Milton's nuanced depiction crafts a figure whose magnetic allure stems from a potent blend of heroic defiance, charismatic leadership, and a tragic, almost human, vulnerability. Satan's immediate appeal is rooted in his magnificent, albeit corrupted, grandeur. From his very first appearance, cast down from heaven into the burning lake of hell, he is not presented as a cowering villain, but as a titan whose spirit remains unbroken. His physical scale is immense, and his suffering is portrayed on a cosmic canvas. Yet it is his intellectual and emotional response to this catastrophe that truly compels. His famous declaration that all is not lost, but rather the unconquerable will, the study of revenge, immortal hate, and courage never to submit or yield, encapsulates a spirit of resilience that transcends mere villainy. This unwavering resolve, an absolute refusal to concede defeat even in the face of omnipotent power, taps into deeply ingrained human admiration for perseverance against overwhelming odds. He embodies an aspiration for self-determination and autonomy that resonates with individual struggles against perceived oppression or insurmountable difficulties, positioning him as a prototype of the defiant individualist. Furthermore, Satan is endowed with extraordinary oratorical prowess and strategic acumen, qualities that undeniably contribute to his charismatic appeal. Immediately after his fall, he rallies his dispirited legions of fallen angels, transforming their despair into a fervent desire for renewed action. His speeches are masterpieces of rhetoric, blending logic, persuasion, and emotional manipulation. He appeals to their pride, their sense of injustice, and their shared suffering, creating a formidable collective will out of shattered fragments. Through his eloquence, he can convince his followers that their defeat is merely a setback, that hell can be transformed into a realm of self-governance, a stark contrast to the perceived tyranny of heaven. This ability to inspire loyalty and galvanize action through sheer force of personality and persuasive language is a classic trait of an attractive, albeit dangerous, leader, highlighting his capacity to forge a new identity and purpose for his defeated followers. The sheer intellectual power he demonstrates in orchestrating the plans for revenge, culminating in the temptation of humanity, showcases a mind of formidable strategic depth, making him a truly formidable and compelling antagonist. The tragic dimension of Satan's character further complicates his portrayal and deepens his appeal. He is not merely a creature of pure malice, he is a fallen archangel, once among the most glorious of God's creations. Milton frequently allows glimpses into Satan's inner turmoil, his profound regret over his lost state, and the agonizing realization of his irreversible descent. Moments where he laments his inability to repent, his acknowledgement of the overwhelming light he has forsaken, and his internal conflict between pride and sorrow reveal a character burdened by the weight of his own choices. This internal struggle, the pathos of a once exalted being now irredeemably damned, evokes a degree of sympathy that few purely evil characters can muster. He embodies the archetypal tragic hero whose catastrophic downfall is brought about by a fatal flaw, his overwhelming pride and envy. Yet his initial magnificence and subsequent suffering make him worthy of pity, if not approval. This tragic arc allows readers to connect with him on a more human level, seeing reflected in his grand despair the universal experience of loss and the consequences of moral failings. Moreover, Satan's ambition, while leading to his ultimate damnation, is intrinsically attractive because it mirrors fundamental human desires for power, recognition, and self-assertion. His rebellion is driven by an unwillingness to accept a hierarchical order in which he is subservient, particularly to the newly proclaimed Son of God. This desire to challenge established authority, to forge his own destiny, however misguided, resonates with the human spirit's perennial struggle against perceived limitations and injustices. He seeks to carve out his own dominion, to create his own kingdom even in the abyss, rather than to exist as a subordinate. This aspiration for ultimate freedom and self-sovereignty, even if it manifests as destructive pride and defiance against an omnibenevolent creator, presents a powerful, albeit distorted, image of individual agency. His intellectual arguments, questioning divine justice and the nature of servitude versus freedom, challenge readers to consider complex philosophical dilemmas, making him a figure of profound intellectual engagement. Ultimately, Satan's attractiveness in Paradise Lost is integral to the epic's overarching theme of the fall. His compelling nature makes the temptation of Adam and Eve believable and profound. If Satan were merely a cartoonishly evil figure, the choice of humanity to disobey God would seem less significant. Instead, his sophisticated charisma, his persuasive logic, and his grand tragic stature elevate the stakes of the fall, making it not just a simple act of disobedience, but a monumental choice influenced by an antagonist whose appeal is difficult to deny. Milton's genius lies in creating an epic of fall where the source of evil is not simplistic, but complex, alluring and tragically grand, compelling readers to confront the seductive power of rebellion, pride, and misplaced ambition within themselves and the world. Through Satan, Milton explores the profound allure of autonomy and the perilous path of defiance, making him an unforgettable and eternally fascinating figure in literature. John Milton's monumental epic poem, Paradise Lost, stands as a towering achievement in English literature. Its intricate tapestry weaves together theological doctrine, classical epic tradition, and profound psychological insight. At the heart of its enduring fascination lies the enigmatic figure of Satan, an adversary conceived not merely as a symbol of absolute evil, but as a character of such formidable presence and compelling complexity that he frequently overshadows his divine counterpart. The central question that has captivated generations of readers and scholars is precisely this: why is the devil, as depicted by Milton, so alluring? What makes Satan, the arch-rebel and orchestrator of humanity's downfall, so inexplicably attractive? transforming Paradise Lost into an unparalleled epic of fall. Milton, a devout Puritan writing in a tumultuous post-Civil War England, ostensibly set out to justify the ways of God to men. Yet his portrayal of Satan often suggests a different, perhaps unintended, sympathy. Far from a simplistic monster, Milton's Satan emerges as a tragic hero, possessing an array of qualities typically associated with epic protagonists. Leadership, courage, rhetorical brilliance, and an indomitable, if misguided, will. When first encountered after his catastrophic defeat and expulsion from heaven, Satan lies prostrate in the burning lake of hell. A figure of magnificent ruin. Yet even in this state of utter vanquishment, his spirit remains unbroken. He proclaims with defiant grandeur that all is not lost, but rather the unconquerable will, the study of revenge. Immortal hate and courage never to submit or yield. This declaration immediately establishes him not as a cowering villain, but as a being possessed of extraordinary resilience and an almost admirable refusal to capitulate, despite overwhelming odds. His oratorical prowess is perhaps his most striking and consistently attractive feature. Addressing his fallen legions, a vast, despairing multitude of angelic beings cast into eternal darkness, Satan's voice, though scarred by the fires of eternal torment, rings with a formidable power. His speeches are masterpieces of persuasion, meticulously crafted to rally despairing millions, to transform their utter defeat into a motivation for future vengeance. He inspires them not with false hope but with a shared sense of grievance and a renewed purpose, to embark on a perpetual war against heaven, even if it must be waged through guile or fraud. This masterful ability to articulate a vision, however dark, and to galvanize followers into action, showcases a leadership quality that resonates deeply with human admiration for charismatic figures. He convinces his fellow rebels, such as the Stoic Beelzebub, that their defeat is but a temporary setback, a strategic retreat allowing them to regroup and devise new tactics. This rhetoric paints him not as a mere fiend, but as a strategic commander, a political orator of unparalleled skill, capable of bending reality to his will through sheer force of language. Beyond his leadership, Satan's sheer ambition and pride contribute significantly to his complex allure. His original sin was not a random act of malice, but an overwhelming desire for self-determination, a refusal to bow before the newly exalted Son of God. He perceived this divine decree as an affront to his own established glory, an act of arbitrary power infringing upon the liberty of the angelic host. This struggle against perceived tyranny, his fervent belief in his own merit and entitlement, strikes a chord with human aspirations for freedom and autonomy. That it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven becomes his iconic credo, a statement that has resonated throughout history as a powerful articulation of defiant independence, even if it leads to utter destruction. This audacious claim positions Satan as a proto-romantic hero, an individual willing to sacrifice all for the sake of his own sovereignty. A figure who, though deeply flawed, embodies a certain grandeur in his rebellion. Furthermore, Satan's journey throughout the epic often evokes a sense of profound, albeit self-inflicted, suffering that borders on the tragic. Milton carefully depicts Satan's internal torment, his moments of agonizing reflection on what he has lost and the irrevocable choices he has made. In Book 4, as he first beholds the beauty of paradise, a fleeting pang of remorse and envy crosses his mind. He declares, "Farewell, remorse. All good to me is lost, evil be thou my good." But this declaration is tinged with the bitterness of a soul fully aware of its own damnation. This introspection, this brief glimpse into his inner turmoil and the immense burden of his cosmic fall, allows for a flicker of sympathy, elevating him beyond a flat archetype of evil. He is not merely evil, he is a being capable of profound suffering, whose conscious embrace of evil is a testament to the depth of his unwavering resolve, however misguided. This tragic dimension allows readers to engage with his character on a more human, empathetic level. recognizing the immense cost of his pride and rebellion. Milton's unique political and religious context also informs Satan's portrayal. A staunch Republican and proponent of liberty, Milton had himself championed rebellion against what he viewed as tyrannical authority, namely the monarchy. Some critics argue that Milton inadvertently poured his own rebellious spirit into Satan, creating a character whose defiance against absolute monarchy or God might subtly echo Milton's own struggles against temporal kings. This interpretation posits Satan not just as a theological villain, but as a powerful symbol of resistance against oppressive power, making his struggle, however perverse its outcome, profoundly resonant with contemporary political discourse on freedom and tyranny. As the Epic of Fall, Paradise Lost traces not only Satan's initial, monumental plunge from grace, but also his subsequent role in the fall of humanity. Satan, driven by immortal hate and a strategic cunning, meticulously plots the temptation of Adam and Eve. His intellect, his capacity for subtle deception and psychological manipulation, becomes another facet of his formidable character. He observes, he plans, he executes with a terrifying precision, demonstrating a keen understanding of human vulnerability and desire. This intelligent malevolence, rather than a mindless destructiveness, makes him a more compelling and fearsome antagonist, a worthy opponent whose machinations demand intellectual engagement from the reader. The enduring attractiveness of Satan in John Milton's Paradise Lost is a testament to the poet's genius in crafting a multidimensional antagonist. It stems from his unconquerable will, his mesmerizing oratorical skills, his tragic grandeur rooted in immense ambition and suffering, and his portrayal as a defiant rebel against absolute power. While Milton's stated intent was to illuminate God's justice, he inadvertently created a character whose sheer force of personality, intellectual prowess, and monumental struggle resonate deeply. This challenges readers to confront the complexities of evil, freedom, and the captivating allure of the fallen hero in an epic narrative of cosmic consequence. The Epic of Fall thus becomes not merely a theological warning, but a profound exploration of the human psyche's darker, more defiant impulses, reflected brilliantly in the magnificent, terrifying figure of Satan.